What's up, Nom Nommers? For today's video, we are trying a recipe from God of War, the official cookbook of the Nine Realms. Today's dish is a Kratos speciality that, according to Tyr, the author of the cookbook, Kratos probably used to make for a loved one long ago. The list of ingredients sounds delicious: mushrooms, leeks, cheese, eggs, and spices, all surrounded by nice, flaky phyllo dough crust. So what are we making? Mushroom Quiche from the God of War Cookbook. Let's dig in. I started by heating up my pan with oil and adding my leeks. The recipe called for 2 leeks, but my leeks were pretty small, so I ended up using 4. When they started to get brown and crispy, it was time to take them out of the pan. They were looking a little greasy, so I decided to put them on a paper towel lined plate. The recipe doesn't say you need to do this, but I would recommend it. Next, I added a bit more oil to my pan, followed by my mushrooms. I was using both shiitake and white button mushrooms that I had stemmed and thinly sliced. I knew from previous quiche experience that you really need to cook the moisture out of the mushrooms. If you look at my pan now, you'll see all of that liquid being released. If you don't get that out, that moisture will end up getting released into your quiche while it cooks, making it really soggy and not nearly as tasty. Once all of the moisture had evaporated and my mushrooms were browning, I removed them from the pan and got started on my eggs. For whatever reason, I had the hardest time cracking these guys. I mean, I did buy the cheapest eggs that I could find, but really? This should not have been so hard. When the eggs were finally in, I added half and half, salt, pepper, and Spartan spice mix. Then whisked it all together. What's in Spartan spice mix? Well, Kratos is pretty tight-lipped about what goes into his secret spice blend. Luckily, Tyr was able to make him spill the beans. Here's what you'll need: garlic powder, onion powder, dried basil, dried thyme, dried oregano, dried marjoram, dried parsley, ground cinnamon, dried rosemary, black pepper, and salt. Please don't tell Kratos that I told you. Who knows what he'll do? Now that the eggs were done, all that was left was to prepare the crust. First, I buttered my cake tin. The recipe says you only need a 1/4 cup of butter, but that's just not true. I ran out of butter towards the end and had to rush to melt more. My advice would be to go with at least a 1/3 cup of butter. Also, make sure you set yourself up for success. Keep your phyllo dough covered so it doesn't dry out, and close by so it has less opportunity to rip during transfer. With all of this in mind, I began assembly. I very gently placed down my first layer of phyllo dough. It did rip a little bit, but that's okay because the next thing I did was cover it all in butter. The butter not only gives the crust flavor, but it also acts like a glue, keeping all of the layers together. I repeated this process 14 more times for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 layers of butter and pastry. The quiche was almost complete. Next, I added a layer of Gruyere cheese. Then I added the leeks and mushrooms, making sure to spread them out nice and even. Finally, I poured in the eggs. You'll notice I had a ton of excess pastry. The recipe says to just lightly press it down until it's just taller or level with the filling. That made 0 sense to me, so I opted to just trim it off. I found that to be super easy and quick, so I would recommend just doing it my way. Plus, it gave me a little treat I could share with my dog. I baked the quiche until the filling had set. You'll know it's done when a knife inserted into the center comes out clean. Now came the hardest part of this entire process: getting it out of the pan. I was really hopeful that by some miracle, I'd be able to just slide it out. As expected, that didn't work. That meant flipping it out was my only option. I just had to do it delicately so that I wouldn't crush my crust. The first flip went well with minimal damage. The second flip proved a bit trickier. I just didn't have the dexterity I needed when I was wearing my oven mitts. Thankfully, the sheet pan wasn't too hot and I was able to quickly grab it sans mitts and flip the quiche over. There was a bit of damage, but all in all, it looked amazing and smelled delicious. Finally, it was time to see how it tastes. Wow, this is so much better than the first quiche that I made. Really making sure to cook the moisture out of the mushrooms makes a huge difference when it comes to the texture. The crust is delightful. It's really crunchy and crispy. The flavor of the eggs is also spot on. It's got this really great earthy mushroom flavor that's complemented so well by the cheese and the leeks. The only real negative that I have is I think it's just a tad bit too salty. Would I make this dish again? Absolutely. It's both tasty and really fun to make. The only thing that I would change is the addition of salt to the egg mixture. Otherwise, I think this is great. Thank you for watching this recipe review. If you've made this dish before, let me know what you think by dropping a comment down below. And as always, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more. See you next time.